By now, everyone knows the problem, and everyone has been affected by it, in one way or another, whether they're aware of it or not. Whatever it is that's finally made the difference, the price of gas, relying on foreign oil, war, pollution, natural and unnatural disasters, maybe it's just the recognition that it's time to evolve. Whether it's through wind power, or sun power, or innovative combinations of power, you could say people are finally reclaiming their power. However you look at it, the revolution, or the evolution, has arrived. What if you were a company that's been working toward this moment for over 25 years? And what if you had a set of technologies and strategies that really only needed people to be ready to step out of the dark ages before sustainable energy and into the light of today? You'd be pretty excited too. But tectane also understands that to meet the challenges of today, you have to look at the past as well as the future, and the earth as well as the sky. And above all, you have to look at nature's clearest source of energy, water. Ordinary water. Because when you combine the molecules of so-called ordinary water with ordinary ethanol, you get the very extraordinary alcohol. And that's what seems to be getting people quite excited and very busy. Montreal, Quebec is the heart of tectane's operation. We went there to talk to the chemists, the mechanical engineers, designers, the real hands-on energy handlers, as well as experienced farmers, high-performance vehicle mechanics, agronomists, dairy and animal feed producers, and many ancillary industry partners, all participating in testing and refining the technologies and cooperative systems tectane has designed. From partnerships with the pulp and paper industry to testing variations of the amazing sweet sorghum seeds that yield up to 2.5 times more alcohol than corn. A dozen related fields are all working with tectane through a virtual village, combining old and new, local and global, bridging the gap between what's already working and what might be one collaboration away. And we talked to the financial experts who are betting that tectane's unique combination of technologies and partnerships will become the tip of the spear of the new ethanol movement. We spoke to Nino DeSantis, the president of tectane, to get a sense of the history of alcohol's development and its status today.
We are classified by the United States Department of Agriculture as alcohol. The United States Department of Agriculture back in 1980, quote, says that alcohol is 800% more efficient than gasohol. Anybody can do gasohol. Almost all the countries have blended 10% alcohol with gasoline. Alcohol is the injection of alcohol and water, so therefore was classified as alcohol.
Tectane's alcohol is really a hybrid of two technologies, both remarkable in their own right. But before we explore tectane's success growing sweet sorghum as a super crop for making ethanol, let's check out technology number one, the key to the puzzle, which has a long and pretty incredible history, the deceptively simple water injector.
This is where it all started, actually. Back during World War II, the planes wanted more horsepower, so TRW and Rolls-Royce came out with a water injection system. When you put water in an engine, it expands 2,000 times, so you get a boost of power. So these fighter...
Norman Wagg was TRW's original inventor of the injector. which helped the fighter planes reach higher altitudes over enemy planes and gave them a critical fighting advantage. WAG later adapted the jet fuel system for race cars, and then ultimately passed on his technology and trade secrets to Tectane, where together they began refining the system for regular cars.
Now you're looking at the famous water injection system. And what this really does is injects directly into the combustion of the engine, into the furnace of the engine. And the way that the water is being effective is that at 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, in the combustion of the engine, water is turned into hydrogen and oxygen.
We had a team of mechanics install an injector on an ordinary old car to see what it could do. But first we went to OTI emissions laboratories to help explain and confirm the basics of the science involved.
The great advantage of adding water is that the water contains 89% oxygen and 11% hydrogen. So at about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, plus the pressure in the motor, the water splits into oxygen and hydrogen, and then it recombines itself to produce water and more energy, clean energy. That is the big advantage.
Okay, I hope you got that. Now here's just a few of the advantages the water injector can achieve because of all that. I talked to a variety of mechanics about the difficulty of adding a system like this to cars that already have very smart computers in them, and they assured me it was easier than it used to be. It was just a matter of having the code. Ain't that always the truth? Anyway, the mechanics put one on a car for us, and the installation went pretty fast.
Okay, so Fernand and the team have put it on, and now we're going to see whether she flies. Okay, beautiful. Turn it on. That's it. Fantastic. I'm starting to see the water flowing there already.
Oh, it's flowing.
Well, it didn't blow up. That's a good sign. Water is flowing. That's a great sign. Now we're going to see if it actually drives.
Of all the claims of being able to drive on gas or ethanol, saving money, saving the environment, the first one I wanted to test was the super low octane claim. Tectane says you can drive any car with their system using even raw, what they call straight cut, dirt cheap, 75 octane gasoline, and your car will purr like a baby. The injector will actually boost the octane past anything you could get at the gas station right now. So we went back to OTI to get some of that cheap raw stuff and try it out.
To verify that this is what?
75.0 octane, the blend that was made and tested on the octane machine.
Okay.
In a normal car, this gas would make your car knock and jerk.
Nice, cheap, raw gasoline working as if it was high octane. What do you think? Enjoying the drive?
I will enjoy the drive, yes. I'm listening to see if I can hear something.
I don't hear anything.
Nope, not a knock at all.
Zero knockage. Next time we do it in a Rolls.
I don't know if you found that as fun as I did, but it fairly instantly proved the first money-saving option. Okay, let's jump over to emissions for a moment. Here's an amazing fact. You've heard of the trusty old catalytic converter, which is on virtually every car in the world, designed to reduce polluting emissions. Well, it was discovered and completely underreported that the catalytic converter itself was creating CO2, the main cause of global warming.
We did a test right here in Montreal with CarQuest. That's one of the fastest growing auto parts distributors in both the U.S. and Canada, whereby we took two cars, one with a catalytic converter and one without. And we have signed documents by CarQuest showing that the car without the catalytic converter, but with our system, had less emissions of all the emissions.
While the catalytic converter is indeed minimizing many of the major pollutants, it's burning them, causing heat and more CO2. Tectane's injector does its job with water, cooling the system, reducing CO2. As good as this is, you should see how much better things get when the fuel is alcohol-based instead of gasoline. Back to the lab.
This is what happens when you put your car on. Now, we are burning this gasoline. As you can see, we're making CO2, CO, NOx on burning hydrocarbons, and it's all part of this black suit that we see. In other words, this is a combustion which is not very efficient, incomplete combustion. You can see. That's what we call pollution.
Wow.
Now, I will show you how we burn pure alcohol, and we will see the difference between the alcohol and the gasoline at the flame. So this is pure alcohol. Now we burn just like before gasoline. As you can see, there is no black smoke here. The combustion is really, what I would say, a complete combustion. What a big difference, eh?
Okay, so now we got really excited and decided to take a trip to the country. Not a Middle Eastern country, incidentally. We went to the country because tectane's second big weapon in the war on pollution is cultivating a super hybrid crop, again originally developed 30 years ago by the Carter administration during the 70s oil crisis, and then abandoned when oil prices came down. The crop is called sweet sorghum, and it grows faster, yields much more alcohol per acre, doesn't need pesticides, and can be used for half a dozen other amazing things, or so tectane says. So, we went out to talk to the farmers and agronomists who don't wear suits and actually grew the crops to hear what they had to say.
Sweet sorghum, it grows many more tons, and then of course you have the seed, and then you have the shell of it that they can actually turn into.
Lee is no crusader or scientist. He's just a regular upstate New York farmer who's been looking for a viable new crop and testing the realities of using tectane's sorghum seeds.
So we plowed this little section up right here, Nicholas, and we planted it, and the rows were really crooked because we planted it by hand, and we didn't have any way of cultivating it. So then as the weeds grew and the sorghum grew with it, I was totally convinced that it was not going to amount to anything, that the weeds were just going to choke the life right out of it. But the amazing thing is when the weeds grew their full height, which was pretty high, that sorghum started to grow, and it just kept growing. And of course, as we've had the pictures of it, it was like 12, some of it was 12 and 14 feet high. An amazing thing to see. I was literally stunned to see how that sorghum could just grow past the weeds like that and still get such tremendous height. That,
How high would corn normally grow?
well, corn, it can get to 8-10 feet, and this sorghum was way up above that. And just totally amazed me because we hadn't put fertilizer, we hadn't sprayed it with anything. And once those weeds grew to their full height, then that sorghum started to come up past there, and it was just like a rocket on a rail the way it was growing. It was an amazing thing to see. If I hadn't have seen it and somebody was telling me this, as I am now, I'd be hard-pressed to believe it. Corn, again, you'll have to spray it. It's very expensive, and then you have to fertilize it. But there's no corn that I know of you could get 2 crops.
It's kind of sad to think that all this time farmers have been struggling to get by on corn, which is toxic to the earth, needs tons of expensive pesticides, and makes very little ethanol. It almost makes you think there might have been a corn cartel out there, obliging farmers to do it. So we took the next step and went to a second project at the Botanical Gardens, where 6 varieties of the crop were being tested under more focused conditions, where we spoke to Tom Fournier, who has been working with tectane for the last 6 years, and is in fact a crusader for the wonderful world of sweet sorghum. He's become convinced that sweet sorghum will almost literally save the planet. If planted right, the sorghum has many more stems and can be planted in developing countries in arid conditions. He says we're right now between 2 worlds. We have a choice. Keep polluting the earth and the air with the wrong crops, or choose the one that could literally make the critical difference. Something to think about. And so we can't resist taking the next step and checking in on the government project tectane has been coordinating, where the seeds themselves are analyzed and hybridized in their ceaseless quest for the seed that will save the very earth in which it's planted. We spoke to Martin Tremblay, who works at IRDA, the Quebec Government Agro Lab. Man, do they have fun down there. Checking, filing, storing, cataloging. But that's how it's done. We got Martin to kindly take us on a field project. Along the way, he also took a moment to discuss some of the ravages of corn. Again, we were here in August, so the sorghum was still at baby height. But these were many of the final contestants for Miss Super Sweet Sorghum. The winner would of course go on to the Miss World or Miss World Saver contest, which will span from here to China. Remember, the winner has to grow super fast, need much less water, yield 2 crops a year, which no ethanol crop does now, grow a gorgeous grain top, which can be used as animal feed or cereal, and have a strong, shapely stalk that can be used for countless other things. You don't win the world title by just wearing a bathing suit anymore, sister. All right, for those of you who are still fascinated, we go to the final check, the extremely hard to impress or amuse Cornell scientist for a quick opinion. Even he thought the sorghum solution was already here and ready to deploy.
But without a large investment, if some of these crops can be grown on some of these small farms, that will really help the rural communities. What I have seen has been very encouraging in terms of the crop of sweet sorghum. I was out here a couple of years ago and I observed firsthand a great crop with minimum amount of fertilizer and no weed control, and that have pictures that show that the crop was over our head. It was encouraging. I mean, there was a crop with very minimal inputs put into the ground that was higher than your head, and I was...
Meanwhile, back at the executive branch, there's a whole other benefit. The same way you can use cheap, low-octane gas with the injector, it also lets you use the cheapest ethanol as well, for the cheapest, the cleanest fuel in the world.
Ethanol basically is alcohol made from any type of cellulose crop. So whether it be from sweet sorghum, corn, sugar beet, sugar cane, or whatever, anyone can make ethanol. What we're talking about is using a different type of ethanol called hydrous ethanol. The injector is able to use hydrous ethanol with the way it works. We don't need anhydrous ethanol, which is the very expensive high-quality ethanol that's being blended with gasoline currently. The result is in more efficiency and less costs, therefore increasing your margins.
But just when you thought you were as impressed as you could be, we finally get to the interesting part, the really interesting part, as in everything else you can do besides making fuel.
The sugarcane industry for over 200 years has been crushing sugarcane. The minute that you crush the sugarcane, you crush the alternative opportunity to make byproducts because the fiber has no more integrity. They have made what they call bagasse for over 200 years, and they burn it to run their sugarcane plant. We, on the other hand, are like a sawmill that separates the fiber from the sucrose that's inside, and therefore the fiber is now capable of making alternatives like pulp and paper, energy sources by burning it and offering electricity to towns or municipalities, and also the flour grain top that can make either bread, animal feed, or cereal. These are very valuable byproducts that Mexico...
Again, we don't take these fancy claims lying down. We go deep recon into the otherwise not necessarily spellbinding world of animal feed, wood chips, building materials, and paper making. But they have all just hit center stage because the second largest cause of global warming is deforestation, so much so that China has outlawed the cutting of trees, period. Believe it or not, these sorghum production byproducts can make a critical difference in all these areas and help save the atmosphere from the ground up. The first and possibly most impressive byproduct is building materials. As you just heard, the actual stalk of the sweet sorghum, as if it doesn't do enough, can be split instead of crushed, and the fiber strands can be woven to make not just chipboard, but a totally organic wood substitute that could replace plywood for building houses anywhere in the world. And in less than 1/10 of the time it would take to regrow the trees, which could now be allowed to grow back, look great, and absorb the CO2 that's still around, before the last polar bears drift down to China to march on Tiananmen Square. And then there's paper.
Sweet sorghum is great for making ethanol, but what is very important for China also, it has hundreds of paper mills that have shut down because they cannot get cellulose anywhere in the world. So cellulose being the second byproduct from the fiber of the stem, and in Canada, it's being sold right now at $80 a ton. Just that can give us can give China a new wind in making its own paper for its own use. All this technology has been proven by the company Cascades that this fiber can be used in the manufacture of paper.
Yep, we went to talk to the paper people, thinking surely they would have done this before if they knew how much money they could save. And the answer is yes, they would have, but they didn't. But indeed they are now. Their results showed that they could use 30% less wood.
We've been actually working with sweet sorghum since 2003. So it's been now 3 years, and we're continuing to...
Their results showed that they could use 30% less wood by using the sorghum pulp.
If a type of plant can be used for a premium application, and then we can use the residue for paper making, then it's a good alternative.
And finally, the cherry, or grain, on top. Just when you thought this stuff could do no more, it can actually supply very wholesome food to animals, or bread for that matter, in developing countries, where it's much easier and cleaner to grow sweet sorghum than sugarcane, and needs much less water, which is another big advantage.
With the sorghum, I mean, the whole plant was fed here to the animals. So they had the grain and the plant.
Or else, if you don't have the right ratio between fat and protein in the milk, you get paid less for your milk.
Farmers are struggling these days, and these amazing seeds in the ethanol alcohol markets they could sell to literally could mean the difference of surviving or not surviving to thousands of farmers. And finally, there's the energy business itself. Energy plants all over America which burn different materials to generate electricity and are another set of perfect tectane partners for those energy plants that aren't so keen on going nuclear, which is probably their only other option to stay competitive.
We can't have anything too dry or too wet. Waste wood is very dry, so we cannot burn it just on its own. It burns too hot.
Right.
So our whole tree chips range anywhere from 35 to 45% moisture on the norm. We do have...
The point being, sorghum chips are a perfect, cheap alternative to replace the moist wood the plant needs.
Another aspect that our process brings in terms of efficiency of operation, reducing costs, is the opportunity for cogeneration in producing the ethanol, which is basically using the byproducts.
The big kicker is that the energy plant itself loses 30% of its energy through heat loss. By capturing this heat and using it to power an ethanol or alcohol plant, Tectane's cooperative cogeneration system could save both systems big money and help the state to resist the allure of nuclear power and its famous friend, nuclear waste. Okay, we're going to stop traveling for a minute and hear the pitch.
By having the injector installed as many cars as possible, even with gasoline engines, you could have a substantial saving immediately. Time is of the essence. We can start tomorrow, and we can be implemented and running within a year.
Yep, that's big talk. But I have to say, I saw and heard a lot of convincing stuff, and it is pretty amazing, and there is no time to waste. Still, we decided to relax and enjoy Montreal for a moment, being careful not to pollute too much ourselves. And I tried to wrap my head around the big picture and tectane's plan for the world and solo technology for developing countries.
Developing ethanol and on the ancillary businesses, and when that all comes together, you have alcohol, and I mean it's a pretty dazzling combination of technologies and systems.
In our case, what we've done is made an alternative to global automation. What's happening in the world right now is that we become so sophisticated with technology, but we're eliminating employment, especially in developing countries, because of automation. An average plant today in a developed country that's $100 million does not require more than 20 or 30 people. This is automation at its best. It's wonderful in the sense of technology, but the disadvantage for all the developing countries, it's not providing any employment, versus our company is doing it in reverse. We're taking the opportunity to give the people in the developing countries employment on what we call solo technology, so that we're creating huge, massive employment opportunities.
I know you're thinking that's all well and good, but how does all this connect to the financial markets, which are not known for their charity and benevolence? Does tectane's approach fit in and hold up from the point of view of the energy markets and the brokers who are trying to pick the next big winner in the energy sweepstakes? We found the guy to tell us, the man at the top. And I mean the top. If there was a guy above this guy, he probably got blown off.
Can you tell us what this company is and what your position is?
Okay, I'm a portfolio manager. I'm with Montrose Bolton over the last 16 years, and I look around the world for investment for my client with a large team of analysts and other portfolio managers.
Sounds good. I'd like to join the club.
Please do.
How much has investment here gone towards energy over the last 5 years?
About 2.5, 3 years ago, the energy sector account for, let's say, 10-12% of the overall index.
Balance of investment.
Now is ranking number one at 31%, more or less.
Now at 31%
of the overall index.
Index is energy.
No wonder why the Canadian stock market outperformed any other market, the major in over the last 3.5 years.
Part of this whole show is dealing with these tectane technologies. If ethanol, large scale, ethanol is the most powerful trend towards the big alternative, then any technology that really refines, so to speak, the system of making ethanol faster, cheaper, safer, less polluting is a very powerful place to concentrate, I would think, investment and energy.
That will come, and that become obvious at one point. You know, as I mentioned, one will do it, the second one will do it, and you just need to have one or two to really start it, and the rest will have to follow.
Not just individuals, eco-companies, and industry leaders, but nations are allying with tectane in joint ventures around the world.
The Philippine government is welcoming the tectane group, and they're ready to go based on the letter of commitment from the government sector and also from the private sector.
More countries from Canada to Thailand are getting involved every day. There's a lot going on, but there is no time to lose.
6 years ago, we started working with China. Since that time, we have formed joint ventures with the government of China for over 1 million acres of land for the production of this crop, sweet sorghum, to be processed into...
We wanted to get one last opinion from an environmental scientist who's been consulting with tectane purely on the environmental impact side of things, where the term net balance, as in zero net balance, is the holy grail, the ultimate goal.
I'm trying to establish whether the approach of tectane really makes a critical difference in the net balance concept.
The big advantage with that is that the emissions that you get out of this mix of alcohol and water, the emissions are minimal, or minor, compared to conventional fossil fuels. In addition to that, using this technology, you end up with close to what we call a zero net balance in terms of emissions, because
what does that mean?
That means that you can grow one crop, depending on the climate, or two crops of sweet sorghum per year. And every time you grow that crop assimilates or takes in a certain amount of CO2 from the atmosphere. So whatever
the crop is actually absorbing CO2.
It's what we call the CO2 fertilization effect. So there are significant benefits to the use of sweet sorghum, and that would enhance that zero net emissions.
To switch from one crop to another, to be more efficient in your transportation, and to be recombinant, if you will, in your ancillary projects, makes a 10, 20, 30% difference, which makes the whole net balance extremely viable.
Yeah. There you're going to get significant reductions in the emissions of especially carbon dioxide, which is the major or the most important greenhouse gas.
So, why hasn't sweet sorghum been grown for the last 30 years? And why haven't you heard of even the old water injection technology that could have made alcohol all this time? Because we needed oil, and only oil. The oil companies and the government confirm this. And it's not like governments or corporations lie. They just forget stuff for a few decades. But sometimes they can remember again, if you just jog their memory. But this is no time to be cynical. We can't afford it. But then again, we can't afford to remain naive. It's time to do what can finally be done. The technology is here. So many people are joining in to rise to today's challenges. It's clear the revolution and the evolution have begun. And tectane is proud to be a part of it and to offer its support. In fact, you could say, tectane is not so much a corporation as it is an invitation with a bottom line.